Your real competition when you're raising funding. I was really excited after we pitched our company to Ryan. He was clearly excited about what we were building. We shook hands at the end of the meeting, and Ryan said he would get back to us shortly with next steps. If you've ever had an investor love your pitch and still pass, this is usually why. The following Monday, I got an email. Ryan wrote, "I talked about Touchstone on Monday and did some more work this week, and it's just a huge mountain for us to climb to get it done. I believe in you and the team, and it's really impressive what you've achieved, but with limited capital to deploy, there is a ton of pressure on us in terms of what opportunities we pursue. While I believe you will make money for your investors and the team, it's hard to stack it up against everything else we are looking at right now. I am more than happy to talk with you about it live." That was a pass. Ryan liked us, but when he brought the deal to his partners, they compared us to the other investments they were evaluating, and we didn't make the cut. That's the insanity of raising venture capital. Investors are not deciding if your startup is good. They're deciding whether it's the best opportunity they have right now. In today's video, I'm going to explain why your real competition when raising venture capital isn't just your market or your technology. It's other startups investors are evaluating at the same time. Hi, I'm Brett. If you're raising funding, I have a free startup pitch deck template. Thousands of CEOs have used it to create their investor pitch. You can get yours by scanning the QR code or typing the URL on the screen. And if you like my channel, then hit the subscribe button and the bell so you get notified every time I release a new video. Let's get started. When I first started raising money, I thought investors were deciding one simple thing. Was our startup good enough to invest in? But that's not exactly how fundraising works. Investors are constantly comparing deals. This leads to the first thing founders need to understand. And let's start with Section 1. Section 1. Investors are always comparing deals. I should have known better when I met with Ryan. Don't get me wrong, it was great that he was excited about us. However, just because Ryan was excited didn't mean his fund would be excited. Ryan still needed to socialize the deal with his partners. This meant he would talk about us, what we did, our strengths, our weaknesses, and possible outcomes with his partners. If Ryan's partners were excited, then he'd go forward. If they weren't, then he'd move on to the next investment. That's the harsh reality of raising money. Remember, for every 100 face-to-face meetings an investor takes, they will invest in one company. This leads us directly to the second thing founders need to understand. Section 2. Section 2. Sometimes you're not the first choice. I was meeting with Jack, a well-known investor in our space. We had met several times already. Jack said to me, I was deciding between whether to give a term sheet to your company and Company X. I have to be honest with you. I offered a term sheet to Company X, but they decided to accept a term sheet from another fund. So now, I'm going to make you an offer. I wasn't offended by Jack's brutal honesty. In fact, I was happy the other company, which I knew, decided to take another offer. The reality is that investors are constantly ranking deals. All that matters from your perspective is that you end up with the offer at the end of the day. But there's another dynamic founders rarely talk about. Section 3. Section 3. Investor relationships matter. Back to my story about Jack. Jack then said, let me get in contact with Gil. A few days later, Gil, our lead investor, called me. He said I spoke to Jack, and I spoke with my partners. We just can't get comfortable working with Jack. His fund is smaller than ours, and we're worried about his long-term viability. It was another no. This time it was because Gil's fund didn't want to work with Jack's fund. This happens all the time. Each fund has a reputation, and each partner has a reputation too. Gil and his partners were concerned about Jack's ability to provide follow-on capital for the next round. If Jack couldn't provide funding, then Gil's fund would be left holding the bag. Investors don't just evaluate companies, they evaluate who they will be in business with for the next 10 years. And this connects to something even bigger. Section 4. Section 4. Venture capital is a portfolio game. Let's go back to the 100 meetings for every one investment metric. It's helpful because it points out several things. First, it's a reminder of how high the bar is to get an investment. Second, the math of 100 first meetings per investment makes it clear that the typical investor can't make more than 1 or 2 investments in any given year. Third, each investment needs to have the potential to return the value of the fund. Yet, the majority of a fund's investments will return nothing. Add all this up, and you can see the game investors are playing is one of betting on asymmetrical returns. Venture funds don't make hundreds of investments every year. A typical venture fund might make 10 to 20 investments each year. And out of those investments, they are hoping that 1 or 2 become enormous outcomes. That means every time an investor writes a check, they are asking a brutal question. Is your company one of the few investments that could return the fund? There's a finite number of investments a fund makes. That's why you're competing against the other opportunities they are looking at. This brings us to the next reality of venture capital, Section 5. Section 5. Industries go in and out of favor. Winston, the partner I was working with at US Venture Partners, sent me a note indicating they were passing on investing in us. He said, "We're focusing more on software investments." At the time, USVP was one of the last remaining semiconductor investors in the Silicon Valley. It was a continuation of the trend we had seen since we started raising our Series A funding. Fewer and fewer VC funds were investing in semiconductor companies. It would take a syndicate of funds from Florida, Texas, Pennsylvania, and Massachusetts to get our Series B funding. Today, certain semiconductor investments are back in favor. That's the reality. Sometimes investors pass because of timing, not quality. So what can you control? That leads us to Section 6. Section 6. Your only real advantage. My feeling always was to focus only on what I could control. The markets are going to change. The competition is going to change. So control the things that you can control. Exceptional companies rise above the noise. Push yourself to be exceptional. The more clearly investors can see the upside in your company, the easier it becomes for them to choose you over the other deals they are evaluating. Keep striving to reduce the risks to investors. In doing so, you'll have a better company and a more investable company. Now, if today's video is resonating with you, then please hit the like button right now. One final thought, you have to make the odds work for you. The path to raising your funding is rarely a straight line. There are likely going to be lots of twists and turns in your journey, just like there were in my journey. I used 2 things to keep myself sane when I was raising money. The first was that the more investors I met with, the more the odds worked in my favor. The second was the odds of the investor I was having a first meeting with investing were low. However, I knew if I kept meeting with investors, we'd raise funding. You need many different things to align to raise money. That's how you make the odds work for you. Now, if you want to build a pitch that gets the details right, then join me in Zero to Pitch. It's where startup CEOs like you create the first draft of a pitch investors actually want to see. Inside Zero to Pitch, our free community, you get the structure and support to take your pitch from idea to draft so you can finally see what's working and what needs to be improved. Scan the QR code to join. And if you want to fix your pitch and build a company investors will trust, watch the free 20-minute training over my left shoulder. I'm Brett at brettjfox.com. Thanks for watching today. Take care. Bye.